Upon publication, an Indigenous people's history of the United States shattered our understanding of the U.S. as a land discovered in the New World. This young reader's edition continues that re-education by accessibly challenging the doctrine of discovery, manifest destiny, and the myth of the U.S. as a nation of immigrants. Here, readers will learn about the ongoing Indigenous genocide often omitted from textbooks, the role colonialism played in forming the U.S., and the many ways Native Americans have actively resisted U.S. imperialism for centuries. For First Chapter Friday, here is an Indigenous people's history of the United States for young people. Originally written by Roxanne Dunbar-Ortiz and adapted by Jean Mendoza and Debbie Reese. Origin narratives, or stories about how this all began, help a group of people feel that they belong to a community with a common past and shared ideas about what is important. Origin stories are central to a people's sense of a unifying identity. However, origin stories may leave out key aspects of what actually happened and overemphasize others. That is the case with the most familiar origin story of the United States. In the late 15th century, as European explorers sailed to unfamiliar places, their actions and beliefs were guided by the doctrine of discovery, the idea that European nations could claim the foreign lands they discovered. The doctrine of discovery was laid out in a series of communications from the Pope, leader of the Catholic Church, who was extremely influential in European politics at the time. It asserted that indigenous inhabitants lost their natural right to that land as soon as Europeans arrived and claimed it. People whose homelands were discovered were considered subjects of the Europeans and were expected to do what the discoverers wished. If they resisted, they were to be conquered by European military action. This enabled Columbus to claim the Taino people's Caribbean home for Spain and to kidnap and enslave the indigenous peoples. Similarly, the Pilgrims and the Puritans, the first groups from England to settle what became the United States, believed they had a covenant with God to take the land. The doctrine of discovery influenced the policies of the young United States and directly affected the lives and the very existence of Native people. However, history textbooks for young people rarely invite students to question or think critically about that part of the U.S. origin story. Free land, with all its resources, was a magnet that attracted European settlers to the Americas. The word settler is used so frequently that most people do not recognize that it means more than just a person who settles down to live in a new place. Throughout history, it has also meant a person who goes to live where, supposedly, no one has lived before. More often than not, settlers have gone to live somewhere that is already home to someone else. They are important to a nation, like Britain or Spain, when it plans to set up colonies in an area. Colonization is the process of taking political and economic control of a region, and colonizers are the people or institutions that are part of that process. The military, business interests, people who go there to live, and sometimes representatives of religious institutions. Because of their key role in establishing and populating a colony, settlers may be called colonizers. Settlers who came to what is currently known as North America wanted land for homes, farms, and businesses that they could not have in their home countries. Settlers who used the labor of enslaved Africans wanted limitless land for growing cash crops. Under their nation's flags, those Europeans fought native people for control of that land. Even when the United States consisted of just a few states on the eastern seaboard, the country's founders fully intended for America to extend from sea to shining sea. In fact, the first law of the new nation was created because of that demand for land. The Continental Congress wrote the Northwest Ordinance in 1787, 2 years before the Constitution was ratified. It allowed settlers to live in Indian Territory, west of the Appalachian and Allegheny Mountains. Before that, the British government's proclamation of 1763 prohibited settlement there. In 1801, President Thomas Jefferson described the intent to expand the boundaries of the United States, saying, "It is impossible not to look forward to distant times when our rapid multiplication will cover the whole northern, if not the southern continent, with a people speaking the same language, governed in similar forms, and by similar laws." This idea eventually came to be called manifest destiny, the belief that English-speaking Americans were destined to spread their presence and their ideals across the entire continent. Manifest destiny was the banner under which the homelands of indigenous peoples would be taken. And this has been a preview of an indigenous people's history of the United States.